Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. When Mr. Mendez spoke, he and answered Mr. Sutherland's question, if he were king for a day, what would he do? And it would be basically get everybody in a room to decide what it is rather than governance by memo. I know in my experience working in the private sector, once you got beyond about 5 letters or memos, it was time to sit down, or you weren't getting nowhere, or you weren't getting anywhere. I would appreciate just a brief response from a couple of the other panel members on whether or not they think this would solve that or not.
Mr. Chairman, if I were king for the day, the one in response, direct response to Mr. Sutherland's question relative to what is the major impediment, I think I can say it in a word. It's trust. And if we could be more trusting of our partners in this effort, both with the environmental groups, both with the regulatory agencies, with the implementing agencies, if we had performed our responsibility in a way that developed our credibility to a point where we could achieve trust in the process, I think we would have gone a long way to correcting that cultural issue that we have been talking about. And we want to be very careful and make sure we are providing some specific recommendations to the subcommittee on how you can approach this problem. But it really does involve a cultural change. And I'll cite just briefly the example of the NEPA delegation in California. I can tell you when we first implemented that process and when our legislature did in fact agree to forego sovereign immunity in the case of transportation projects, there was a great deal of reluctance, not from the leadership at the Federal Highway Administration, but from some of the staff people, because they had grown up in a culture which was looking very specifically at how we were doing business. Now, I will tell you, in response to Ms. Napolitano's question, we've had that process in place now for 3.5 years, and you've heard the results, and the response from the Federal Highway Administration has been very positive. And I think we have gone a long way in this process to developing that credibility, leading to trust.
All right. Now, in the written testimony or background material I was provided, there was a document from the Texas Department of Transportation. Texas being my state, that's the first one I read. But they list the amount of time it takes to get through some of these federal agencies and federal processes, citing up to 6 years dealing with Fish and Wildlife Service Austin office. I mean, that just seems insane. One of the things that I learned growing up was a promise isn't a promise unless it's got a deadline, and maybe a review isn't a review unless it's got a deadline of when it gets out. Would anyone on the panel like to comment about the possibility of looking at some of these laws and regulations requiring reviews by various agencies and saying, all right, you got X amount of time, and if you haven't come up with it then, sorry?
I'd like to comment. I believe that's a very excellent idea. There are, in some cases, Fish and Wildlife, they have 135 days to give you a biological opinion. In our case, it took over 3 years. After there was a preliminary determination that had already been made, there was no jeopardy. There are those issues, the same thing with EPA and Corps of Engineers. There's no time limit set. You have to continue to do the study and to do the analyses that are put on the table if you ever have any hope of being successful.
Go ahead.
I would say that time limits can be workable, but only if the agencies have the resources needed to meet those time limits. And at a time when, for example, EPA is being asked to take a 36% budget hit in the remainder of this fiscal year, their capacity to deliver on timely project reviews is going to be handicapped by those budget cuts. Across all of the states today, we have massive cutbacks in the resource agency budgets, which impairs their ability to go beyond what is their core regulatory missions to get involved in the planning process early, which can often help forestall the kinds of delays that alarm everyone here in the room. And so I think we have to look at how these pieces connect to each other, and budget decisions do impact the ability of agencies to deliver on time.
Even with a limited budget, however, or maybe a limited budget is a good thing, then it forces an agency to set priorities about what they're going to want to deal with. So I just leave that, and I see I'm out of time, so thank you all very much.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman,
Napolitano. Oh, yes.
I'm sorry,
yes,
but I just wanted
Sure.
to say that what you have suggested to the member from Texas is exactly what we're proposing in our prompt action provision, which would require a deadline and would require agencies to meet their responsibilities within a specific time frame. Now, this issue of staffing is something that we've taken very seriously in California, and it is a problem, and I really recognize what Mr. Replogle is saying. The fact of the matter is, in our case in California, many times the State would provide the consultant support or a staff person to actually aid the regulatory agency in conducting the review. That did help speed activity along, and so that is one step that there should be a great amount of flexibility on.
Thank you. Mrs. Napolitano.
Thank you. And Mr. Kempton, if you wouldn't mind, the question that I had posed